Being a game developer is all about messing up. Uploading code which breaks the game, accidentally deleting an entire database, or changing a material parameters and making all the NPCs skins transparent is just the meat of the day-to-day life in this work. And I'm surely no exception. For the first 2 years of my game development career, I made so many mistakes that I will go every single day to my home thinking that I will lose my job the next day. And even if that was stressful, looking back, I think I wouldn't trade those mistakes for anything, because they taught me so much about the work and made me grow in so many different ways. Today I want to take you on a trip to the past and take a look at those 2 first chaotic years of my career, where I'll share my 5 biggest mistakes as a junior game developer, the lessons I learned and how I grew because of them, even if I ended up being laid off. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Hi, if you're new here, my name is Danny and I'm an engineer turned game programmer and content creator. And in this channel I help other game developers deal with everything about game development which actually has nothing to do with making games, like finding work-life balance, not burning out on the job, or beating imposter syndrome. And I focus so much on these problems because back in the day when I started in game development 5 years ago, I thought that the biggest challenge would be the technical ones, like writing code, learning an engine, or dealing with shipping a game. But I quickly realized that the biggest challenges are not external, but internal. Like this fear that we have about not being good enough for the position we have, and thinking that we don't deserve the praise that we are getting or even the position that we have. This was especially difficult for me because the problem of not seeing yourself as good as you should be on your position is that you don't have the confidence to give it your best, and you are constantly fearing of messing up and getting fired. And that's exactly the first mistake, the fear of breaking the game. I think I started my first job on the industry in 2022, and back in the day I had no prior experience in game development. I did a couple of game jams, I have a personal project on my college career, but anything so serious as the project I was working on now. And when I joined that company, I remember that I was so scared of doing pretty much anything, because I thought that I would break the whole game, which is actually what ended happening. And I remember one time in which I was collaborating with the production team and we were rebuilding the whole Notion database system for the company. And I was taking ownership of actually rebuilding the entire database from scratch. And one of the things I wanted to do is remove everything which was unnecessary. Long story short, I thought that something was unnecessary and completely delete it. And that caused that the whole animation database break it in one day. To this day, I still cringe when I think of the message I got from the head of production asking me what the hell did I do to break the whole animation database. But really the thing I remember the most is that even if the mistakes were there, and it was a big mistake on my part, we could fix it very quickly because you can restore previous versions of any page in Notion really. Because the way I see it, like 90% of mistakes are fixable. And being a boss myself, I can tell you that your boss is not looking for an excuse to fire you. Because hiring people, and especially if you're a good worker, is one of the most difficult things to do in a company. So the lesson I got from this mistake is that I shouldn't be that afraid to try new things on my job, because even if I mess up, we can fix the mistake and move on. Since being paralyzed because of fear is a really bad place to be in your job because you are afraid of trying new things and experimenting with new technologies, which I think are usually the things that move the needle on your career. But I didn't know that yet because the second mistake was, of course, avoiding experimentation. On the last game I worked in, Tintin Reporter Cigars of the Pharoh, I was responsible of 2 main tasks. The controller effects, which are all the effects you feel on your hands when you play something with a controller, like the upbeat rumbling, the triggers, the light on the PS5, you get it. And the character viewer, which is this place in which you can see all the models of the game, like the Resident Evil 4 remakes. And the thing is that I was a little bit worried on both tasks about the coupling of the system, which refers to how intertwined all the different codes parts of the game. Usually, the less coupled a system, the better, but there are some special cases that you need something to be connected to one another. How this relates to the mistake is that when I started working on the first tag, the controller events, I used a design pattern called Observer to decouple of the different parts of the game. And that created a very nice situation in which any part of the game could trigger some effects on the controller without relying on being connected to it. The point being that this experiment that I tried worked very well. But when I moved onto the character viewer task, I was so full of myself that I tried the exact same thing for no reason. And the technique I did on the last task didn't work on this one because it was a completely different requirement. And the thing is that I avoided doing experimentation because I thought like, if this thing worked last time, why wouldn't it work this time? And looking back, I think this decision was mostly based on ego. And I chose doing something that worked last time instead of trying something new and risking myself the shame of failing. So the key takeaway here, I guess, is that even if experimentation is scary, I think it's crucial to try new things, even if you are risking the same of failing. But don't get me wrong, I think that experimentation is not always the way to go. I can tell you from my own experience that overcomplicating things is one of the worst things that you can do. And this is something I do very often. That's why the third mistake I want to tell you about is balancing speed and scalability. The conundrum of every single task for a game developer is that you need it to work on a specific situation, but it needs to also work in the game as a whole. The way I see any task is that you are making a compromise with something. You cannot get it all and you always have to make a trade-off. For example, if you build something which is very scalable, it probably takes a lot of time to build in the first place. On the other hand, if you build something very quickly, it's probably a nightmare to replicate it on the game. I remember the last mechanic I worked on before being laid off affected pretty much the whole game. And I remember I needed to build a system to manage the camera fob, and I overcomplicated the hell out of it. I remember trying to build a system which takes any camera fob and then combining it with something extra, like making a layer system, something which is... it was nuts. And it didn't work, of course. The thing is that the more the task advances, the more I realized that maybe the simplest solution was the best. Because I realized that if I had started with something much simpler and then tried to add things on top of that, it would make my life so much easier because I would know from the start which things were useful and which weren't. This is just the Occam's razor principle in eyesight. It basically says that if you are presented with two solutions, you should just take the simplest one. And I don't know even why it's called Occam's razor. I guess the razor means that you should shave off any complexity? I don't know. And I really vibe with this lesson because I think most of life comes down to just nailing down on the fundamentals. Having a nice communication pipeline, building routines for your work, and just goddamn focusing on one task at a time. And I think if you struggle with any of these things, you will love my completely free ebook. This is just a quick PDF which takes under 60 seconds to read, in which I tell you the 9 daily steps I take in my work every single day, not only to be much more productive, but also to enjoy it much more. There's a link in the description below so that you can get it completely for free. And I think it will be super valuable for you because I feel like the most important things for an A player on a bigger team are the fundamentals. And that's something I learned the hard way with the fourth mistake, communication and toxicity. I know this is very common to hear, but I can tell you that I had the best teammates in the world in my last company. I had such a great time working with them and I learned so much from them. But I remember one time in which a new person joined the team and we didn't get along very well with them. The thing was not only that we didn't vibe with them on a friends level, so to speak, but I remember that this person was a little bit toxic with everyone else. Like the meetings were going nowhere, he wouldn't even take the blame on himself, and he was always saying like it was someone else's fault. I don't know, I surely do these things too, but I remember that the environment was very toxic. And the thing is that anybody would bring this up on any meeting. And this was like a teeny tiny problem which started snowballing until it came crashing on us. Even if it wasn't that hard, we just need to talk to this person and tell him that we didn't like how he communicated. The point being that I discovered that communication is a deal breaker on any game team. It can be your best tool or your worst nightmare. Because someone who communicates very poorly can break anything that you are building, but someone who communicates very well, it's so effective and very easy to work with. So from that point on, I decided to really nail down on my soft skills and communication. Especially because I can tell you that if you get laid off, those are the only things that you get for the next job. And that brings us very nicely to the last mistake, thinking that job security is really a thing. Okay, let me paint the picture for you. I'm a 23 years old dude working in Spain, a country which has some kind of social security for workers, so it will be no surprise to think that I thought to myself that I had some kind of job security, but yeah, it turns out that I didn't. The world is built in a way in which companies can fire people with no cost whatsoever and giving you a mere 2 weeks notice. And I get it, okay, we live in a capitalistic society and we need to go along with these things. But I think we don't bring this up in conversation enough. And I feel bad when I talk to people who are entering the industry thinking that the moment they get a job, they are secure for the rest of their career. And then being surprised and hurt when they realize they didn't. And this is because job security is not real in any place in the world. And I think the only true job security comes from inside. Having the confidence to know that even if you lost your job, you have the abilities and soft skills, resources, etc. to find another one before you run out of money. Because sadly, if you think that your company cares about your well-being, they probably don't. Because at the end of the day, companies are just that, companies, and they want to make money. And they don't really care about your career or your well-being. So if you feel like you are lacking this true job security for yourself, I think you will find very valuable this video right here, in which I tell you exactly how you can build one for yourself. I hope you find it helpful and I see you very soon. Bye bye.